All of a sudden, one kid would be like, shh, 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 everybody stop. And all the kids would stop and be like, listen, listen. And then you'd just hear it so faintly in the background, like, and you're like, ah, it's Ice Cream Man! It's Ice Cream Man! Remember when summer used to last forever? That seems so long ago now, but there was a time in your life where summer months felt like they'd never end. July and August became the longest 2 months of the year, and you lived every day like it was your last. From chasing the ice cream man with a pack of screaming kids to epic water fights and backyard campouts, there was nothing better than summer holidays, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. So grab yourself a giant Slurpee that you'll never be able to finish, a homemade popsicle, and a huge glass of Kool-Aid, and let's dive into the most magical memories of summer. Let's go. You know, today's episode is all about summer staples, and it's fitting because as I'm recording this episode, we're right at the halfway point of summer. That August shift where you can feel that summer's peaked a little bit and we're out of that really hot July weather. And now it's August where things are changing a little bit. Maybe you go for a walk in the morning and you notice it's cool. You got to put a small jacket on or a sweater. Or you go for a walk at night, the same thing. You're like, oh, it's a little bit cooler than it was a couple weeks ago. And it's really subtle, but I think all of us feel it. There's that peak of summer right around the end of July, and then as soon as it's August, it just kind of feels like it just starts to shift a little bit. And summer is still awesome, but August is its own special kind of beautiful. There's something so beautiful about August. It's different. It's not July. Now you're starting to see things like spider webs are coming out. Already there's some leaves falling on the ground. We're getting these little hints of what's just around the corner, but we're still in the middle of one of the most beautiful seasons that we have. Now, when I think about summertime when I was a kid, it just seemed to me like summer lasted forever. It was this unbelievably long stretch of time. The thought of having an entire summer off without having to go to school was unreal. There was no longer stretch of time in the kid world that I can think about other than that stretch of time between when you woke up on Christmas morning and when you were actually allowed to open presents. But that was a smaller scale. Like really summer when we were kids, that was crazy. It was this period of time that felt like its own lifetime. Didn't it? Didn't summer feel like a lifetime back then? Now as an adult, it's so different. 8 weeks, then it's over. For people who work in education or politics when they don't have to be in session in the summer, it's so fast now. It's not like what it used to be. It goes by in a blur. But it was different when we were kids. I think one of my strongest memories of summer as a kid was the first day of summer, like when we got out of school. I just feel like all the neighborhood kids would gather on the cul-de-sac and sit on the power box. I know that was a really common thing back in the 80s and 90s, and I don't know what it did to our reproductive systems, but all the neighborhood kids would sit on the cul-de-sac and hang out on the power box. And there'd be about maybe, there's a lot of us, maybe 8 to 10 of us just hanging out on the power box. Nobody had a cell phone. Different, doing different things. Some kids rode their bike there. Some kids rode a skateboard or a scooter, had remote control cars going. But that's my main memory of summer is all the kids getting together and then just hanging out, right? It was the equivalent of adult porch stooping, except no one was smoking or drinking out of paper bags. We were just hanging out and maybe someone was smoking some Popeye cigarettes, I don't know. But just that's how I remember every summer starting, was all the kids in the neighborhood getting together and just being so happy and relieved that it was finally summer holidays. And there was nothing like that first day. And I can still remember, tell me if your school was like this. We always got out at noon on the last day of school. The last day of school was always awesome because it was just a half day. But the principal always liked to make us think that maybe this year it wouldn't be a half day. Like he was really wrestling with whether or not he was going to let us out at lunchtime again. Because in the mornings we would say our goodbyes, and it was a nice day in class. It's like quitting a job, your last shift at a job when you know you're going on to bigger and better things. Because you just got that sense of relief, right? And you've kind of forgiven all the transgressions of your teacher and any of the kids in your class that were mean to you or you didn't get along with. Everything's fine. All is forgiven. It's summer, right? But we would always have to go to this assembly, and it seemed like a really, really long assembly. They had 400 kids packed into the gym. I'm sure they didn't bother to turn on the air conditioning because it cost too much. Well, they probably didn't have air conditioning. Let's be honest. It cost too much money. So they had 400 kids packed into the gym, and you had to watch the choir would sing some songs that was boring. Then the band would play a couple. Oh my gosh, it's torturing us, right? The band would play, school band would play. That's torture at the best of times. Forget making it the last day of school. Hundreds of kids packed in the gym, at the end of June when it's blazing hot out. The ukulele group would play. That was torture upon torture. I'm sure they had the recorder kids up there. Just awful. Then we would have to sit through these awards. There would be endless grade 7 awards, you know, top math student, top science student. We didn't care. We did not care who ran the most laps this year. All the crazy elementary school awards. Although me and my brother and our friend won that year. We won that a couple times. That was worth it. But other than that, it was just torture. Anyways, I remember like when it would be getting close to the end, the principal would come up there, and it was always like he was wrestling with something. Well, students, Torquay elementary students, it's been a good year. I'm very proud of how you've conducted yourselves this year. Made me proud to be your principal. The behavior was good. And then he'd pause. He'd take this world's longest pause. And because of that, and then you knew it was coming, right? You knew it was coming. And because of that, I've decided to give you a gift. Same speech every year. Same speech every year. I've decided to give you a gift of letting you out at lunchtime. Happy summer. And the kids, 400 kids, just freaked out, celebrated. It was like those videos during 2021 and 22 where kids didn't have to wear masks in school anymore, and all the videos of kids taking their masks off and just celebrating like crazy. That's what it was like. I don't think I've ever been involved in an activity with more collective excitement than that last assembly in elementary school with 400 kids celebrating at an unbelievably high rate of enthusiasm. That's nuts. When I think, yeah, the collective energy in that building was insane. It was off the charts. I don't think I'll ever experience anything like that again unless I become an elementary teacher. And frankly, I don't want that to happen. So that was it. That's probably the highest levels of energy I'll ever experience in my whole life. But it was so fun, right? Because we knew we were getting out for, like I said, like a lifetime. It was a lifetime of holidays coming up. Now, what's different as an adult? Okay, I still get summer holidays as an adult, but I can tell you, I do not have that sense of excitement. And any adults listening to this who also get summer holidays for one reason or another, you're happy, but you're not excited. It's more like relief. It's just you wake up that first day and you're like, oh, I don't have to go to work today. Oh God. It's relief, but it's not excitement. It's the enthusiasm that I felt as a child and that you've probably felt back then. It's not even close to the same level. It's muted joy, which I think is essentially adulthood. It's every emotion from childhood, but muted, you know, dampered down 75%. It's weird the way the emotions and the excitement change. And don't get me wrong, I still love being on summer holiday, but I'm not jumping for joy. I'm not sprinting home on the last day of work and sitting on the power box with the other adults in the neighborhood who also, have some time off. We're not doing that anymore. Now, people who have their kids at home, I don't think there's a sense of relief. For example, like people with young children at home who now have to take care of them for 2 months. That must be a totally different feeling. My daughter is still young enough, she doesn't go to school yet. So I'm used to hanging out with her all the time. But I know there's a lot of people out there with kids, especially who have more than one kid. They dread summer because all of a sudden they're the entertainment. They're the ones who have to take care of their kids all summer, entertain their kids all summer. Kids are stressed out fighting. Maybe they can't afford to send them away to summer camp. It's a very different experience from when you were a kid, from enthusiasm to maybe just a higher level of stress. That's the price of adulthood, you know? Yeah, the cost of admission to adulthood is high if you have kids in a family. No free rides here. Let's shift gears back to when you were a kid. I want to talk about summer staples. That's what this episode is all about. Summer staples. Water fights, I would say water fights were probably one of the number one summer activities you could do when you were a kid. I remember when I was growing up, we used to get every single kid in the neighborhood. There was lots of us. We were like ants, just crawling out of every crevice to have a water fight. There must have been 10, 15 kids all running around the street with little squirt guns, throwing water balloons at each other. The big kids would always cheat and get the hose. It was so fun. I feel like we were having water fights multiple times a week. It was just the entire neighborhood would get involved. It was so fun. And we used to have those tiny little squirt guns, those little plastic squirt guns that you could get from the dollar store. And one of my biggest memories of being a kid and using those things was I would be hiding behind a rock or a bush waiting to ambush somebody. And it's really hot and you get thirsty. So you're just like, tss, 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 tss. And you're literally drinking your ammunition. And then by the time one of your friends rolled around and you jumped out to squirt them, you'd have nothing left in your gun. But the good thing about it was your friend had been doing the same thing. So all of a sudden there's two kids jumping out trying to squirt each other and nothing's coming out because they drank all their water. I don't know what it was about those squirt guns that made the water taste so good, but I still remember that. I literally remember being on my friend Steve's front lawn, hiding behind they had this big rock on their front lawn, hiding behind that rock, just drinking the water and thinking, man, this tastes good. You could bottle this, you could sell this. But of course, nobody's going to buy bottled water, not in the 80s. Now, those little squirt guns were kind of the norm, those were the staple. But I remember things changed a lot when Super Soakers came out. I don't know what year Super Soakers come out. I want to say like 1990, but those changed the entire game because all of a sudden, if one kid on the street got a Super Soaker, every single kid had to get a Super Soaker because you just could not compete in a water fight anymore if you didn't have the same level of technology. The only thing that could defeat the Super Soaker was the hose, and that was essentially cheating, and it also tied you to somebody's house. You weren't really supposed to be shooting kids with the hose. That was kind of the unwritten rule of the water fight that it was supposed to be guns only, but we had these big kids in our neighborhood, and they always busted out the hose. They always cheated, and it was kind of funny. My neighborhood was split between there was about half little kids, like anywhere from sort of 4 to 8, and then half big kids who are sort of 10 to 12 probably, but they seemed huge to us back then. And they cheated every single game. Every water fight we ever had, these kids cheated. They would do horrible things, dump buckets of water on our head. We had this rule that at the refill stations, which was, someone's hose or someone's tap, you weren't allowed to soak each other and you could not use the hose to spray kids. Well, they broke the rules every single time. And we had a love-hate relationship with these bigger kids because we loved playing with them. But man, they would do some mean stuff. But every time we had a water fight, we invited them because it was something about little kids they love the torture. I don't know what it is. And so not a single week went by without us having a water fight with these kids and them torturing us crying, game ending, probably running home, crying, getting upset because they cheated. And then the very next day, knocking on their door again, be like, hey, you guys want to come out and have a water fight? You got to love that kind of tenacity. Now, water fights were a summer staple for sure. And there was really only one thing that could interrupt a water fight that was acceptable. And that was when the ice cream man was coming. I can remember that. I remember us all being outside, all the neighborhood kids outside running around, jumping over bushes, shooting each other with their little dollar store pistols, or someone had a super soaker and everyone going crazy. And all of a sudden, one kid would be like, shh, 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 everybody stop, everybody stop. And all the kids would stop and be like, listen, listen. And then you'd just hear it so faintly in the background, like, and you're like, that's Ice Cream Man! The Ice Cream Man! And everybody would freak out. and drop their guns where they were, and just dozens of soaking wet kids would just sprint inside their houses soaking wet. Mom, I need some money. The ice cream man is coming. I hurry. Just, it's everybody shaking down their parents for money or running and emptying their piggy banks, just desperately trying to get money before the ice cream man was coming. And it was so stressful because as you were inside your house, you could hear the siren getting louder and louder and louder. And maybe you're like peeking out the window and you see other kids outside already like lining up. That was like one of the most stressful times of being a kid was when you could hear the ice cream man coming, and yet you didn't have your money yet. And I remember I had this piggy bank. It was almost impossible to open. I don't know why I had that one, but you had to get this special little tool to open it at the bottom, and it always got stuck, and you're shaking it out, and pennies and dimes and nickels are falling out, and you're just trying to sweep them all into your hand and sprint outside. But sometimes if that thing was empty, I'd have to go to my parents, and my mom was usually the one who was home because my dad worked more. And I'd go to my mom and I'd say, Mom, I need some money for ice cream. The ice cream man's here. Hurry, I need money. She's like, Well, did you do your chores? I'm like, "No, of course I didn't do my chores. You know the answer to that. And it would become this huge debate. Well, I'll give you your allowance, but you have to sweep the kitchen first. It's like, do you not hear the siren? It's right outside. Stressful, so stressful. And so I'd always make these fake promises like I'll do my chores as soon as I'm bought my ice cream, which we both knew was a lie. But I think my mom knew that it was going to be a bigger deal to not give me a quarter for the ice cream man than to have some horrible suffer the wrath of how much I'd lose my mind if I miss the ice cream man. Because that was a terrible thing to happen as a kid. Like ice cream man was great if you made it outside and you ran out the door, you had your quarter or whatever, and all the other kids were lined up buying their ice cream, and you got your moment with the man, and you could order whatever you wanted, and oh, that was beautiful, right? Just like being outside the ice cream truck, eating your popsicle or whatever with some of your best friends in the world or all the kids in the neighborhood underneath a beautiful blue summer sky, you know, sun shining. That was such a magical part of childhood, wasn't it? When you made it out to the ice cream man in time and you got to sit there and like, just like savor that sweet treat with your best friends in the world or the other neighborhood kids. And oh, that was such a wonderful part of childhood, hitting the ice cream man. But it was a total opposite when you missed them. When you didn't make it out in time, heartbreaking is not the right word. I've never been to war, but I imagine it's the closest a kid could feel to missing the last chopper out of off the battlefield or something like that, like missing the last chopper out of Nam. Just the way your heart would sink when you ran outside and you'd see him just driving down the street and turning the corner and like the music's fading. It was almost unbelievable. I still remember the first time I missed the ice cream man, just my heart dropping down to my feet and just like felt like I just like fell to my knees in the middle of the street. It was like, no, he's gone. And the worst part is not only did you miss the ice cream man, but nobody else did. So every other kid on the block is sitting there eating their ice cream, just looking at you like, and they don't care. No kid is going to share their ice cream. Most kids aren't that nice. It was kind of the survival of the fittest, right? If you didn't make it out on time, that was on you. You should have been more organized. You should have been more prepared. Should have done a better job of shaking your parents down faster. You know, I was really lucky in my neighborhood. We had this one really nice group of neighbors. They were actually the parents of the kids who used to torture us in the water fights. They were very nice. Must have skipped a generation or at least kicked in later in life. Um, but they had a deep freeze in their garage and it was always full of popsicles and treats. And anytime they saw a kid who missed the ice cream man, they would come out. They were the best neighbors. They would come out and they would like take them in and they would let them pick something out of their deep freeze. And they had good stuff. They didn't have like generic. They had like hard to find stuff. They had root beer popsicles. They had the blue one, whatever flavored blue is. Blue, I don't know, blue raspberry or something. And so even if like your heart broke and your hopes had been dashed, like if these neighbors saw it happen, they would always come to the rescue. They were just amazing people. They were saints of the neighborhood, the Robels. Wonderful. Wonderful neighbors to a 4-year-old kid who missed the ice cream man. Besides water fights and ice cream, I believe slip and slide was perhaps the greatest invention of the 1980s, at least for kids. There was nothing better than the slip and slide. And essentially all it was a long, narrow piece of plastic with some perforated holes along the side so water could shoot out. That was it. And yet that thing must have sold millions upon millions of units and made the inventor rich. And it was just a piece of plastic. But that was the probably the single greatest summertime toy that was ever invented for a child of the 80s. I remember I got one for my birthday. I think I was young. It was like kindergarten, grade one. Got a slip and slide. I don't know. Other than the Nintendo that I got in grade three, I don't think there was a birthday present that ever made me happier than that yellow slip and slide. And my entire birthday that year centered around the slip and slide. Like my parents got it for me. We set it up. My party was scheduled for later that afternoon. All my friends came over. We had the slip and slide going, Kool-Aid, popsicles, cake, hot dogs, chips. I haven't been to a party that good in my entire life. Like when I compare it, like feeling for feeling, I think that was probably the best party I ever went to in my entire life. And it was all because of the slip and slide. Like there was nothing better than having your friends together. Sometimes you'd put soap on it, go flying on, flying. Sometimes there'd always be that kid who went like way off, get grass burns and stuff. Then there was kids who didn't have nice grass. They had some rough patches in their lawn, and that always hurt. Slip and slide was great. In fact, I actually got I had the chance at the end of June this year. I did a giant slip and slide, and it was down a hill. So it was huge, giant slip and slide going down a hill. And I felt a little weird about doing it because I was the only adult doing it. It was mainly kids going down. But I'm like, you know what? No, I'm gonna do it. I've always wanted to do this, and I never have because I felt weird about it. But I'm doing it. I'm so glad I did it. But the difference between doing a slip and slide as a kid and as an adult is how hurt you get. Because the way they had this thing set up, it went down this big hill, but then it went over it went over a sand pit for long jump because it was by a track. So like the slip and slide goes down this big hill and then it flattens out at the bottom. And then about 6 feet after that, there's a sand pit. And so it goes like, oh, I'm trying to get my hand here. So it goes like down, it goes like, no, I can't do this on screen. Boom, boom, boom. So it goes into the sand pit and out of the sand pit again. And I got so messed up because I went down head first and everything was good until you hit the sand pit and then you're like, oh, and then you come out the other side. And I was trying to explain to my chiropractor what happened. He's like, how'd you hurt your neck? Went down a slip and slide, you know? It's just like, it was painful, but it was worth it. And I think I'll do it again next year if I have the opportunity. But yeah, slip and slide didn't hurt you as much when you were a kid. Even if, like I said, even if someone in their backyard didn't have smooth grass, it was still worth it. As an adult, I was definitely reconsidering whether or not that was the right move. Do you remember when this company came out that tried to one up the slip and slide? They had this thing called Crocodile Mile. It was literally the exact same thing, but the end of it, they had this little inflated bump that you could go over. It was the quote unquote jump. And they had these little flags with the crocodile on it. And behind the flags, there was a pool. That was actually awesome. Crocodile Mile, I have to say, was superior to the slip and slide, even though it was total theft of intellectual property. I remember my brother got Crocodile Mile, and we would watch the commercials, and they would have these kids running at like 100 miles an hour, and they'd hit the Crocodile Mile thing, and they'd hit that bump. And on the commercial, they're flying, right? They're just flying through these flags, a huge splash in the pool. And we thought that looks so awesome. We got to do that. And of course, in real life, when you try it out, you hit that bump and you don't go up in the air. Your body just does a bit of a contortion, you know, where if you were an adult, you'd hurt your back. But it was not as advertised, but it was still fun. Crocodile Mile. To anyone who had a Crocodile Mile or a slip and slide, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That was just the epitome of summer as a kid. Now, speaking of slidey things, water slides used to be a huge part of summer culture for kids. Now, I grew up in Victoria. We had this awesome water slide park. It was called All Fun Water Slides. I know in Vancouver they got, what is it, Splashdown, or it used to be Splashdown. Now it's Big Splash. There's other water parks around the lower mainland. Um, I know places in the States, they have like the Disney water park, Typhoon Lagoon. I'm sure Busch Gardens has its own water park, but water slides are so awesome. And they were such a staple. They were such a summer staple when you were a kid. Every single summer, without fail, my family and I always went to All Fun Water Park in Victoria. And All Fun was aptly named because not only did they have tons and tons of water slides of all different like size and shape and speed, and they had ones with huge drops, and they had a river ride, like a tube ride. They had a go-kart track. They had trampolines with basketball nets built into them, concession stand, beach volleyball courts. They had everything. It really was all fun. And I think, really think some of my best memories of being a kid and growing up were just going on the water slides with my family. And sometimes you would bring a friend, or one of your siblings would bring a friend, and that just amplified the fun you were having. It was so good. And, even when I was older, I loved going on the water slides. Going on the water slides used to be so exciting. I remember never walking at the water slides, always sprinting when you could because the lifeguards would yell at you if you were running. So trying to do that little walk run where you were like not quite walking, but not quite running. You were trying to hit this perfect middle ground so that the lifeguards wouldn't yell at you, but so that you could get to the front of the line faster. It was so exciting. Always like walk running. It was like race walking. It's kind of like the invention of race walking, I think, was done by kids at the water slides. And I remember just being up there, waiting in line, hoping you don't get stung by a bee, and just standing in line and just talking to the kids about which one's the fastest, which one has the most twists and turns, and just trying to figure out which is the water slide, which are the best ones, which are the ones you don't want to waste your time on. And it was so exciting. Do you remember when you would get to the front of the line and it was your almost your turn? And you'd like get to step in and you stepped into the actual water slide part and you just feel the warm water on your feet and the water gushing out of the chutes there and just holding onto that little rail so you didn't slip and get sent down and just like locking eyes on the lifeguard, just staring at the lifeguard and waiting for them to look at you and be like, "Number 6, go!" Oh, it was so exciting. It was such an exciting moment. And then just kind of like that quiet of like as soon as you would take that first step into the water slide, and it was just very like in the moment because all of a sudden you were just like phew, you're in there and you're like trying to like keep your butt off the slide so you can go fast and up on your ankles. And I remember as I got older trying to see if I could go fast enough and like get some air off the jumps, see if I could actually like shoot myself out of the water slide. Well, I found out that actually you could. I never did it, but I had a few close calls where I feel like I almost went over the side because I was being an idiot. And I don't think they were building those things to 80s safety standards, which again, I think were subpar compared to what they are today, which means we had way more fun, but our potential for injury was also quite a bit higher. Now, I remember when I was older, I think I was 18. Yeah, I think I was 18, maybe 19. So I used to work at McDonald's, and every summer, McDonald's would rent out the water slides, and all the McDonald's in the Victoria area and the surrounding area, Lower Island area there, would all go to the water slides. We had so much fun. It was so crazy though, because I remember we used to on the tube ride, we used to make these huge chains of people, and you'd like chain your tubes together by holding hands, right? And there was this old guy working there at the slides. Well, he was probably 50, but back then that seemed super old. And I remember him just standing on the side of the tube ride, screaming at us, "Don't make chains! Don't hold hands! I will turn this slide off and kick everybody out of the park if you make a chain!" And we're like, "Who's this crazy guy?" So we didn't listen to him. And we go on the first big ramp. We got a chain of about 10 people all holding hands and stuff. And as soon as we hit the water, I understood why he was telling us that because it just caused this train reaction of people's tubes bumping into each other and sending kids flying out. And some kid came out of their tube and like literally like hit me in the head like a torpedo. I've never been hit in the head that hard. And I thought I got a concussion. It hurt so bad. And it actually knocked me under the water and I got stuck under someone's tube. And I was thinking, oh, that's why this guy was freaking out so much. This is actually super dangerous. But when you're young, you don't think about that stuff. So yeah, those are my memories of the slide. Almost dying on the tube ride and how much fun and how magical it was as a kid. Kind of contrasting. I can still remember the last time I went to the water slides when I realized I was too old though. This was years ago. Um, I can't remember what the situation was. Summertime, and my brother had come over and my friends were over, and I had this nice house in Tawasin, and there's this water slide park really close to my house, just down the road, like a 5 minute walk down the road. And we decided to go to the water slides. Well, I was in my 30s, I was in my early 30s, and my brother was in his late 20s, and my friends were all, somewhere within that age range. And I remember we got to the slides, and we were the only people there without kids. And it was just super embarrassing. I remember I remember being there and just feeling like I feel so out of place and I feel way too old to be here without children. And then the worst part was that my brother and my friends, they took off for a little while. They left for about 45 minutes and didn't tell me. And so I'm standing in the water park completely by myself, 32-year-old single male in the water park, just standing there looking around. I felt like such a fish out of water. Let's put it that way. I was like, this is not a good look right now. This is not a good feeling. And I have not been back to the water slide since. That was my last time. Never gone back. Although now that my daughter's old enough, I think I'm gonna take her. I gotta reclaim my love of the water slides and feel like I actually belong there. Now, besides actually going to the slides and going to get wet somewhere where you had to pay, if you were lucky enough to have a backyard pool, that was an amazing part of summer. And whether it was a little kiddie pool, little one of those little plastic ones that you could barely fill up, or you had a bigger one where you could actually move around in, having a backyard pool was awesome. It really is like it really didn't matter the size. It was how you used it. And that is one of those things that remains constant between childhood and adulthood is that backyard pools are awesome, right? When my daughter was very young, we had a very tiny one, and it only came up to my waist. And when I was sitting down, I think it was supposed to be a wading pool for dogs in the summer, and got it for 30 bucks at Costco. And I thought this would make a good kids pool, and it did until the side just ripped in half. But now we have one of those bigger Canadian Tire pools, and it's the highlight of summer. It's every day you got to go in the pool. Backyard campouts were also very popular, right? You remember having backyard campouts with your parents in the backyard or maybe a best friend setting up the tent, how awesome that used to be, having a sleepover. And that's something I still love doing with my daughter. Every summer we make sure we set up the tent in the backyard, get out the air mattress. I don't blow them up with my mouth anymore. We got a pump. But it's something so special. Even if you're just camping in the backyard, it's such an awesome thing to be able to do. There's something about sleeping outside under the stars that like it's almost as magical now as it was back then, other than the fact that when you wake up in the morning, your back's really going to hurt and you're going to wonder why you did that and you just swear never to do it again. But, as adults, like most things we do now, we just do it for our kids. We're not doing it for ourselves anymore. Now, all that other stuff in the background, I'll switch gears away from the waterworks for a little while. How many of you made a lemonade stand growing up? That was a huge part of being a kid. And I think lemonade stands are pretty popular in the summer. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I envisioned it was my brother, my older brother, and my friend Steve. We had this vision of making a lemonade stand and becoming essentially millionaires from it. We thought we were going to make this lemonade stand, and it was literally going to draw throngs of people to our neighborhood, and we were going to make big bucks. It was going to be so popular. It was going to be the biggest attraction in Victoria. We were going to get on the news. We were essentially going to retire off this lemonade stand. We had big ambitions for this thing. And so I remember we decided to do a lemonade stand. We spent the morning making our sign, and we had a little TV tray that we taped our sign to. I think we were charging about five or 10 cents a glass for a glass of lemonade back then, and we'd have to get one of our parents to make it. I think we got my mom to make it. We took one of those frozen concentrate cans, and we got all the plastic cups and the pitcher. And I remember we set up shop, and we were so determined that this was going to be a huge hit. That we were going to be making big bucks off this thing. Well, I remember Steve's parents. They came out and bought a glass. Okay, I was assuming about 10 cents there. My parents bought a glass. We're at 20 cents. Then nothing happened for a little while. And like an hour later, one of our other neighbors saw us, felt bad for us. It was the one with the popsicles who used to give out the popsicles. She saw us. She came, had a glass, said, "Wow, this is the best lemonade I've ever had." And we're like, "Finally, finally, right?" We knew it. Some validation. She had two glasses, worth 30 cents. And that was it. We sold six glasses of lemonade at 5 cents each. And between the three of us, made 30 cents. So we each made 10 cents. And we were out there. This was an all day event. We spent all morning planning it, making the signs, getting our mom to our parents to make the lemonade and get the cups and the pitchers and the napkins, everything, right? And then hours sitting outside at the end of the driveway with our little stand and our sign there. I remember that was such a defeating thing, feeling so deflated that our lemonade stand had like crashed and burned miserably. And we'd made absolutely no money and totally unsuccessful. We completely failed. And I remember that was such a huge disappointment and just thinking, how could this business possibly fail? Because in all the cartoons we watched as kids and all the books we read, lemonade stands were supposed to be killer. They were supposed to whip up a lot of revenue, and ours had just been a disaster. And so every time now when I'm an adult and I see a kid running a lemonade stand, I don't always stop, but I try to stop. Like if it's easy and I'm walking past and I got some change on me, as long as they're not charging outrageous prices like $1 a glass. I remember some kid was charging $1 a glass. And I was like, what? Are you kidding? No, that's wait, I'll give you 25 cents. And they didn't want to bargain over the price. And I thought I'm a 30-year-old man arguing over 75 cents here for this kid, but I thought a dollar was a little too steep. This was like 10 years ago before everything went insanely expensive. So I think they were out of line. I didn't buy from them. But generally, I try to support kids with their lemonade stands. I remember a couple of years ago walking through this neighborhood close to where I live, and these kids had a lemonade stand set up, and they were charging a reasonable price. I think it was 25 cents a glass or 50 cents or something like that. So I thought, yeah, yeah, I'll help these kids out. I'll buy a glass. And it actually was delicious. I don't know how much sugar they had in there, but it was very tasty. And so I bought a glass and it was really good. And I thought, you know what? This is really good. This is really good. So I bought another glass and I thought, I'm doing something nice here. I'm helping these kids out, making them feel good, supporting their business. I'm enjoying the lemonade. And then I just make a little small talk. And I'm like, yeah, so how's the lemonade stand going? How you guys doing with it? Oh yeah, really good. Really good. We're making lots of money. And I was like, really? Because when I was a kid, I didn't make anything. How much money you made? They go, no, about $100. I said, what? You made $100 from a lemonade stand? They're like, oh yeah, yeah. Well, our mom was helping us out. I said, what do you mean your mom was helping you out? She's like, oh, she was out in the morning and she was helping us sell it, and we made $100. And I thought, that's crazy. Wish your mom had been in my lemonade stand. Well, good for you. Good for you. That's amazing. That's really impressive. Good for you. Continued on my way. The next day, I was walking by there again, see the same kids out at the lemonade stand, and this time I see their mom who's helping out. Let me just tell you, their mom looked like a real life Barbie doll with some work done. And this woman was very, very attractive. And she's standing at the side of the road with this big sign that says lemonade. And she's this like petite little thing with this very, very good looking woman. And she's got this sign and she's jumping up and down at the side of the road like lemonade, lemonade. And I'm looking at these guys in these pickup trucks like driving, like screeching to a halt on the side of the road, be like, I'll take two. And just it was unreal. There was literally the next day when I walked past, I'm not joking, this is 100% true. There was two or three trucks lined up on the side of the road with these guys who wanted to buy lemonade from this woman, right? Like no offense to the kids, good for you. But it was I was like, oh, okay. All right, all right, all right. It's your mom selling the lemonade. I get it. But you know what? Hey, good for them. They made $100, probably 200 over those days. And I don't know. That was just funny to see. I wish she had been helping my friends and I sell lemonade back in the day because we would have made a lot more money. When I think about summer and I think about summer staples, did you ever have a really special summer place? Like a certain camping spot your family always went to or your friends went to? Or maybe there was somewhere you visited every summer that you went to, or maybe a summer camp that you went to? Just somewhere or a lake you always went to? For me, I had this magical place growing up. It's called Shawnigan Lake. And oof, man, if you want to wrap up childhood, like an amazing childhood in one setting, it's Shawnigan Lake. Because my grandparents, they had a trailer in this RV resort. It was actually really nice. It was this beautiful spot full of it was next to a big wooded woods and it was on a lake and it had like trees everywhere, playgrounds. Oh, so beautiful. This is kid paradise. And we went there every summer. And I remember it was like going there with my grandparents in the summertime. That was literally like the best part of my childhood. And when I think about like what are the happiest memories of my life, it's always there. It's always at Shawnigan Lake and it's always with my grandparents. It was just so wonderful. Like it was literally like the perfect summer spot. They had like a little village up the road with a corner store and restaurants and stuff like that, little coffee shops, like really small, really quaint. And you know what? The place has barely changed in 40 years. That little village at Shawnigan Lake is almost identical from when I was a kid, and I still remember with so much fondness. And every time I go back there, I just get that same warm feeling of coming home. And I wonder if people listening, if you got a place like that, what your place is and how it makes you feel when you think about it. Which for me, Shawnigan Lake was awesome. My best friend, his grandma had a place across the way. So I'd be up there with my brothers, my grandparents, my best friend in the whole world. They had a giant, there's a forest that bordered the trailer park. We used to walk through there. We used to pick apples off the trees and just eat apples off the trees, picking blackberries in the woods. We used to walk the logs that made the little swim area. It was so dangerous. They were so slippery, and they'd have sometimes two or couple logs chained together, and they'd be like, a foot between them, and knowing that you could very easily slip and fall off and hit your chin and knock yourself out and you drown. Didn't matter. Like it was so slippery. The logs used to roll as we used to walk along them. We'd be covered in moss and stuff like that, or like that green algae, and so slippery. We didn't care. It was such a triumph of the will to be able to walk the entire log, like log outline of the swimming area. It was one of those like ways to test your kid mettle. You could earn some street cred there if you could do the logs. They used to have a train that went past there. And I remember it was a big, exciting thing in the morning to run down to the train track. And it was kind of like the ice cream man because you could hear it coming a mile off. You could hear it blowing its whistle. And so we'd be eating our breakfast there. We'd be sitting at the table in the trailer eating our wonderful breakfast of champions. They had the Kellogg's Fun Packs there, eating like a bowl of Frosted Flakes or Fruit Loops or Apple Jacks. Apple Jacks was the healthy option, Cheerios, Corn Flakes, whatever, Rice Krispies. And then you'd hear this train whistle blowing, and all of a sudden, like my grandpa and my brothers, we just grab our shoes and just start sprinting towards the train tracks. And everyone would have like a penny in their hand because we used to flatten pennies on the train tracks. And it was a mission back then. It was this ultimate mission to get to the train tracks before the train came, put your penny on the track, and then have the train come through and flatten it, and you get to keep this flattened penny. It was hilarious. It was hilarious, and it sounds like a niche thing to do. But by the time we would get to the tracks, there'd be all these other people who had done the exact same thing. It was this hilarious thing that we did in the 80s, crushing pennies on train tracks. I don't know. Childhood hobbies, things I don't could not care less about anymore, but was so exciting. So exciting back in the day. And I remember at the village up there at the little corner store, I got this piece of childhood memorabilia. It was a hat, and this was the probably the proudest piece of clothing I ever owned in my entire life. It was this orange and white hat, and it had fake bird poo all over it. And the writing on the top was "Damn Shawnigan Lake Seagulls." And my grandma and grandpa let me buy it. And I couldn't believe they were letting me buy a hat that said "damn" on it because I was only 4 and I didn't swear or say bad words. So it might as well have had the F word on it. I felt like such a badass wearing that hat. And this was the hat that I wore to all formal events and occasions, like any kind of kid formal event or occasion. This is my like piece that I put on to really impress people. A hat with fake poo all over it. Would you ever do that as an adult? Be like, you know what, guys? Gonna go meet this chick. Got a date lined up. Got a really important work meeting. It's important that I make a good impression. I'm gonna take this hat with the fake poo all over it and I'm gonna wear it, okay? Yeah, man, that sounds like a great idea. I can't go wrong there. I love the kid logic. That's hilarious. Like, never, never, as an adult, would I do that. I honestly, I could probably go on forever about what were the summer staples and summer rites of passage as a kid, but there's so many, and I think we're lucky that a lot of us we can still do them, right? We can still set up a pool in the backyard. We can still have a camp out with our kids if we want to. We can still go camping somewhere. We can go to a lake. We can walk through a forest somewhere. Yeah, I think we're lucky. Like we're still living in an age where we can do all these things, and even if they don't feel quite the same as they did when we were young, I think it's still really important that we get out and do those things because I actually just got back from a 3-day bike trip with my brother and my friends, and we went through Shawnigan Lake. We actually camped out in Shawnigan Lake. We stayed for a couple nights, and you know what? I was so happy just being there with my brother and my friends, doing all the same stuff I used to do as a kid. We swam in the lake, we picked berries. We didn't flatten any pennies on the track because, well, we don't have pennies anymore, and the train doesn't exist anymore. So those are two things we couldn't do. But we got snacks at the corner store, coffee now versus, chips and pop when we were kids. But it was like it still gave me that feeling of enjoyment and wonder and that I was really doing something amazing and magical. Because for me, like I said, Shawnigan Lake is that magical place that always will be. And I hope in your life you have somewhere like that. And you know what? I hope that it's somewhere where you can still go back to if you want to, because even if the place has changed a little bit and you've changed and the way we enjoy things is different, I think it's still really important that we make time for ourselves as adults to still enjoy those little things in life that we just did on a daily basis when we were kids, right? We 100% took it for granted when we were kids because that was just our life back then. But as adults, it's different. You got to make time. You got to intentionally put yourself in these places. But it's really worth doing. And if you can, I highly recommend that you make the time for it. I know we're in August now, and it's easy to think of the summer as being halfway over. But another way you can look at it is it's actually just halfway begun. And that's really how I want to approach the rest of the summer. There's a lot of stuff I still want to do, a lot of stuff I want to do with my daughter and my family. And I've crossed about half my things off my list, but there's still halfway to go. And if you've got a list of things you want to do this summer, just make sure you're doing them, right? Because before we know it, September will be back, the weather will change, everyone will be back to school and work and back to boring routines where we're just longing for the freedom that we may have had in the summer or on our vacation. So just, yeah, I encourage you to make the most of it and use the time that you have because we know that in just a few short weeks, it's all going to be over. And before we know it, we're going to go from complaining that it's too hot to complaining that it's too cold, right? So make the most of it because you still got half of it left. I want to thank you for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped you reminisce about maybe some things you used to do back when you were a kid or some really special places that, will always hold a special place in your heart and your memory. And like I said, I encourage you to go out and make the most of the summer while we still got the time. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to give it a like, follow, share it with someone who might get a kick out of it. Wish you a very enjoyable and happy rest of your summer day, and I'll see you next week.